All right. Welcome to the Saga of the Clone Saga, aka the Clone Zone Comedy Action Hour, presented by the students of S.H.I.E.L.D. To reading the entire infamous 1990s Spider-Man Clone Saga and more. We're gonna pull it apart, and today we're kicking off things by going way back in time. We're gonna be talking about the death of Gwen Stacy, as published in Amazing Spider-Man Volume 1, 121 and 122, which is a truly iconic story. John Williams is producing a theme song for this podcast. Scheduling issues with the string section, so it couldn't make air date. I'll throw it to Nick to talk about our sponsor this week.
Yes, our sponsor for this week is this Zelda amiibo. The only amiibo I have, so support it, because they support us.
Thank you. And now we have two introductions to get through. If you saw our last episode, we mostly did introductions for ourselves and the podcast. And so now we have two guests here joining with us who will be regulars on the show. And they're going to talk about who are they, their general opinion of Spider-Man, their history with the character, whether that's through comics, film, TV, video games, toys, etc. They have any history at all, whether they have any history at all with the Clone Saga, but don't get too deep into that because we'll get to more of that obviously later on. And also, it doesn't have to be 30 seconds.
Dan, take it.
Who wants to kick it off?
Right. Okay. Hi, guys. I'm Dan. I am a big fan of Spider-Man. He's probably my second favorite Marvel character behind Iron Man, obviously. You know, I did watch the cartoons in the 90s a little bit with Spider-Man, you know, I guess into the 2000s as well. But the real exposure in terms of comics that I got with Spider-Man was I remember my dad bought me Spider-Man number 500 back when I first started getting into comics. So from there, I got into it. I've read, you know, the original Clone Saga, all that stuff, up until, like, you know, the Alien Symbiote Saga, that whole beginning of that. So I'm really into Spider-Man and really excited to talk today about the death of Gwen Stacy. Really iconic moment in the history of the character. So, yeah.
All right, and I'm Matt. I'm a 22-year-old man who is way too excited about Spider-Man, just in general. I've been a big fan of Spider-Man my entire life. I don't remember exactly what my introduction to the character was. It was either through the 90s TV show, which I watched a handful of, or actually reading the original Clone Saga over and over again in an essential volume, black and white collection, which I still have and currently falling apart. So I've been a huge fan of Spider-Man my entire life, like I said, and I'm looking. I haven't read the Clone Saga, the 90s Clone Saga, the fun one. So I'm looking forward to getting into this.
All right, thank you. Both of these fine gentlemen will hopefully join us on many episodes to come.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like I said, today we're talking about Amazing Spider-Man 121 and 122. I'm just going to go run through some basic information on them first, and then we'll get into the meat of it. These issues came out in June and July of 1973. Well, actually, that's their publication date. We're not going to get into technicals of that. Both issues are written by Jerry Conway. They're penciled by Gil Kane. They're both inked by John Romita Sr., but also Tony Martellaro. I couldn't get confirmation on this, but I'm pretty sure Martellaro, or however you say his name, excuse me, I'm pretty sure he was mostly just inking the backgrounds, which makes sense, and then John Romita would do the characters. And we'll get into the art later. The first issue is colored by Dave Hunt, and the second one by Tony Sanchez. Both are lettered by Artie Simek, who was a big-time editor in the Silver Age at Marvel. And both of these issues are edited by Roy Thomas, who at this point would have also been the editor-in-chief. And the covers are both done by John Romita Sr., I think, completely. And when these issues originally came out, they were 20 cents. So it was a lot cheaper back then. So I talked about Jerry Conway. Jerry Conway was he was around 20 years old when he wrote this story.
It's insane.
Which is kind of crazy. I think all of us Billy, you're 28, right? No, not. You're
I'm
not.
18.
Okay. So Billy's the only one here who's younger than Jerry Conway was when he wrote this story. Which is kind of scary as far as like, I mean, it's still like fucking comic books, but in the grand scheme of things, the impact one can make. And 121 is actually also his third issue as the sole regular writer of the title. He had a short fill-in run a few issues back, and then for a while he was co-writing them with Stan Lee. But 119 was his first issue when he was the only writer, and he'd served that role for about a few years. And then Matt mentioned how he read not this, but a story that we'll be talking about later in an essential volume. So I'm going to quickly run down where you can read this story. Obviously, digital comics are a thing now, so you can read this on Marvel Unlimited or buy the issues individually from Marvel or Comixology or anything like that. There's a Spider-Man Death of the Stacys volume, which is available in hardcover and paperbacks, and that also usually includes the arc where Gwen Stacy's father, Captain Stacy, dies. Billy, do you happen to have your book with you?
I can go get it.
No, that's fine.
Yeah.
So that's where Billy read it. This is also available in the Spider-Man: The Goblin's Last Stand Epic Collection. Also in Marvel Masterworks Volume 13, which is only in hardcover for Spider-Man. They didn't put it in paperback past Volume 8. Matt would have been reading Essential Volume 6. And there are older Death of Gwen Stacy trades, which you might randomly track down. And those, instead of including as well the death of her father, they often include the Harry Osborn is on drugs story, which is somewhat linked to this, and we'll get into that. And then for many years, the Spider-Man run was collected like years later in single issues as Marvel Tales, and that's how a lot of fans in like the 80s and 90s were able to read the early Ditko and Romita stuff. And then obviously you'll get a lot of like versus the Green Goblin stories. So now let's get into things. What did you guys think about this issue? And let's if we can, let's try and go issue by issue and somewhat chronologically, and then we'll kind of get into the overall thing.
So
all right, Nick, what did you think of the issue?
Okay, so I have read these before, but revisiting them, it's just sort of this era. Like you can see how much they pack into one issue. Like there's a lot of stuff going on, obviously story wise. I don't know. Should I go into specifics then of 121?
Yeah.
I really like this because he starts off with was it like Harry's on LSD?
Yeah.
Kind of funny. And then
there's a comment about how LSD plus depression equals schizophrenia. I don't know if that's real science, but fine. I'll go with it.
LSD was a stand-in for heroin, but they couldn't use heroin because LSD doesn't work like that.
It clearly didn't. They weren't big on drugs back then in the Marvel office.
I mean, it was the 70s. So they were big on drugs.
Yeah, but not in the Marvel bullpen. They were against that.
That's false.
But I think just off the bat with the cover has that classic thing where you have a bunch of faces and boxes, and it's like a mystery, like who's going to die or who's going to join the team. It's kind of like there's other examples like Avengers 16. The Old Order Changeth is another example of that, and then especially Avengers would have multiple things of that whenever there was like a roster change issue. And I love on the cover, it's not a trick, not an imaginary tale. And like, this is still when they had, the text on the cover, and they're really trying to sell you on it.
I miss text books.
Well, who brought that back in the Spider-Man title at one point was Joe Quesada.
Yes, he did.
For the One More Day story arc, for some reason they decided, let's put text on the covers because that's nostalgia. And I'm sure we'll that reference will come up a few more times throughout the whole length of this podcast. I think it's funny that in the beginning, so comics usually they have like a story title, and so like the opening captions for this book are like, "We're not going to tell you what this comic is called."
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
They're like,
Save it till the end.
we're hiding it, and then in the very end it comes back and it's shown.
I like that. I think it's a pretty cool. I don't know. It's kind of a gimmick, but I think it's pretty neat.
I think it works because it sucks you into the story right away. You're like, hey, we're not worried about like whatever this is called right now. You're just sit down, strap in because you're reading a book.
Yep.
This is pretty important.
I wonder if the whole Harry Osborn like LSD plot was like a misdirection for the Gwen Stacy death. Because I mean, to be honest, like I don't know if anyone like reading this. Obviously, we all know because we know what it's called now. But I wonder if anyone reading it back in the 70s like knew that Gwen was going to die or like had any indication, because it really didn't seem like like Peter was coming back from an assignment in Montreal and like he's going to be reunited with her, and then like this whole thing happens with Harry. It's like, oh well, I guess Harry's going to kick it, but then Gwen just gets snatched up and dies. So
I mean, I think there's a good amount of what could be considered misdirection in this issue. There's the whole scene with Robbie and Jonah at the Bugle, which adds nothing to the story. It's kind of cool. Like I like hanging out with them, but it adds nothing except it puts them in the book.
Yeah.
So I guess that could be misdirection.
Yeah, there's just one cool line in that scene where Spider-Man just yells at Jonah and he's like, "Spider-Man sells papers."
Yeah.
Is that wrong?
Like as we were saying, this picks up on the Harry Osborn drug addict plot line. And here's a dumb little piece of trivia. Within this story, there are editor's notes telling you when Harry Osborn is on drugs happened. And Roy Thomas got the issues wrong, and he gets them wrong in the next issue too. The actual story was in 96 to 98, but the editor's note says 97 to 99.
Boo.
That's amazing.
Yeah, so Harry Osborn is tripping, and as far as the number of issues, it kind of has been a while since then. And those issues infamously did not have the comics code on them, because even though we're talking about the LSD, the way they present it is so tame and exaggerated and everything like that, but they still, at the same time, they weren't really supposed to do that. And Stan Lee went ahead with it anyways, because he was kind of trying to, I don't know, it was like social commentary or whatever he was going for. And then these issues, despite, I mean, it's not like anything's graphic at all, but these issues, right after that, they're back to the code. And so the Comics Code Authority is on the cover of these issues.
My favorite person working out in this issue is actually not Harry. It's when Norman hallucinates that he sees Spider-Man on his desk and he's like, "I'll kill you!" He vanishes through him.
Yeah, some of the panels of him like bugging out, oh my god, they're frightening.
There's a really good one right after that page where he tries to tackle him.
Yeah.
And it's like a half-page spread of he's like clawing his eyes out almost.
Yeah, and that's something that I want to talk about, especially when we get into 122, is how Gil Kane draws essentially Peter when he's angry is terrifying. It is so scary.
He is not happy.
Honestly, it's great.
Yeah, so getting to Norman, so at this point, all the way back in Amazing Spider-Man 39 and 40, that's when Peter Parker and Norman Osborn both learned each other's secret identities under the masks. And so this is 121, so that's quite a while ago. But also in the narration, Peter Parker says that was, quote, a few months ago, which kind of clues you in on like how strange and like variable the timeline was at this point in Marvel history, because the first like 38 issues of Spider-Man, which is the Stan Lee and Steve Ditko run, that's like, it doesn't go super fast, but like that covers a decent amount of time. Like graduates high school and everything like that. And then 39, that's the issue directly after Ditko leaves, and they revealed Norman Osborn's identity, but then there was some amnesia shit. And so the Green Goblin really hasn't shown up since then, in about 80 issues.
Yeah.
And now his mental blocks are breaking down, and then we go into the main plot and everything.
Yep.
I'd say this is my first time reading this, so I didn't actually know that Gil Kane drew this. I thought this was Ramita because the faces look very much like Ramita faces.
Yeah, and I think Ramita inking it probably helps with that, but Kane definitely does a very good Ramita impression.
Yeah, it's very good.
I like it a lot.
I like it. I think the colors are really, really good in this issue.
Mm-hmm.
And the biggest thing for me that I didn't know is that when Spider-Man's fighting the Goblin, he's not operating at 100%. He's got this nasty cold.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of a trope, I think, in Spider-Man comics is Peter not feeling well.
He's always getting sick.
And I really like that. But
I mean, that's probably not insulated. New York's cold, so
you got to think about it though. If Spider-Man was operating at 100% when he fought Goblin, he would have punched like straight through his chest and killed him immediately. So, he has to be like that.
Comics would not have allowed that.
Oh,
Yeah,
I mean, he gets a hole in his chest later anyway, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
GG.
There's one panel where like Spidey's swinging, and then like he like loses his balance for a second, and I don't, just for some reason that panel, like I think it's hilarious. He's like on the side of the building. He's like, ah.
Yeah.
Man,
So Norman, so Peter goes to Harry's apartment, and Harry's in bed, and then Norman kicks Peter, Gwen, and MJ out of his house, and then we have Norman regressing back to his Goblin identity and realizing that he knows who Peter is and everything like that. And then we get to the real big impact where Norman Osborn grabs Gwen, and I like the panel where he actually snatches Gwen.
Oh, it's so creepy. You can see it in the window.
Yeah, you see her face like half the panel close up, and then him behind in the window. And it almost reminds me like it's almost like the cover of the first appearance of Swamp Thing, where it's kind of like that uneasy thing where you see this like innocent looking girl in the foreground, and then some like creep sneaking up. And so he takes Gwen to the bridge.
I'll say that's a good panel, but the better panel is the one coming up where Spider-Man makes it back to his apartment, and he just sees the bag and the pumpkin bomb.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Now, an interesting note about the bridge. I don't know if you guys have ever gotten into this controversy. The text, it actually depends on where you read this. The text says the George Washington Bridge. And it makes sense because Peter also points out it figures Osborn would pick something named after his favorite president, which, like, I don't know what that means. Like, is that supposed to be?
Because he's obsessed with money.
Yeah, but like George Washington
$1 bill.
But within the art, Gil Kane actually drew the Brooklyn Bridge, not George.
Whoops-a-daisy.
And so occasionally some reprints and some references in future stories, they try to retcon this, but then you have to ignore that next line about the money and everything like that. And then obviously this story is so iconic that they've recycled this plot line several times in the I think is it Spider-Man 2 in the Raimi trilogy.
I thought Spider-Man 1.
No, it's the first one.
Yeah, in Spider-Man 1, because it's still Norman. Norman
Spider-Man 2.
MJ off the bridge, and it's the Queensboro Bridge, not the George Washington or the Brooklyn. And in the Ultimate Spider-Man comics, MJ is thrown off the Queensboro Bridge. In the 90s TV show, again, it's MJ, but she's thrown off the actual George W. Bridge. And so...
Marvel Knights, I think.
Yeah, Marvel Knights. Norman throws Mary Jane off of, I want to say the Brooklyn Bridge, but I could be wrong.
Here.
I love does he just keep using the bridges? And he's like, it worked one time, it's gonna work.
He has one trick.
I think he's really into the bridge. Yeah, he saves. Well, no, he doesn't. He doesn't throw MJ though. In Knights, doesn't she try and shoot him, and then she falls?
Oh,
Yeah,
that might be right.
yeah. That's sorry. Yeah,
Yeah, well, close enough. So,
yeah. And this time, Spider-Man.
and then in Superior Spider-Man, Anna Maria gets thrown off the bridge, and then also in a story which we'll definitely get back to in a second, in Sin's Past, Gwen's daughter Sarah gets thrown off the bridge.
Oh, god damn.
Past panels do not happen in these two issues. I was looking for those. They weren't there.
Yeah, and we'll get into some of this later, but eventually, after this initial story, Peter actually, for the most part, learns how to save people when they get thrown off the bridge. He either swoops down,
moral of the story.
he either swoops down, jumps, and like tries to kind of catch them with the momentum, or he just goes and like has one of those moments where he goes insane with the web shooters and just tries to get all their joints completely or with flash.
That's so stupid.
Wait for the time that doesn't work and every bone breaks.
Yeah, it's like, oh fuck! I didn't just break her neck. I broke her back, her legs, her arms.
Spider-Man saved her, but she's crippled for life.
Yeah.
I think in a few panels, like if any, like just a weird art thing, in a few of the panels, the glider looks fucking tiny.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
And like Peter makes a joke about how it looks like a toy, but like it really does. Like there's like one or two panels where it doesn't even seem like Norman can fit on it.
Yeah, I can see it right now. There's one right here. Oh, that's
The one
so
where he
weird.
breaks it,
When
especially.
he falls off of it.
That's so funny.
And so the other thing is, Norman doesn't. I mean, I guess a lot of people just figure this because of the movie and stuff like that. But Norman doesn't actually throw her off the bridge or drop her or anything. He like crashes into her.
Yeah.
Pushes her off the bridge with the glider. So then Gwen is falling,
Mm-hmm.
and Peter's like, "Oh, I'm gonna save her," and he shoots out his webs, and then he thinks he saved her, and it's kind of hilarious because he's so full of himself. He says, "Not only am I the most dashing hero on two legs, I'm easily the most versatile. Who else could save a falling girl from certain death?" And then he cuts off. And then it's like, oh,
So sad.
shit, she's dead. And then I thought it's kind of like, if you just take it out of context, some of
My question
like,
is, because the neck snap, the snap effect is there by her neck,
Mhm.
and I'm wondering if this is the first time you read it without knowing. There's no way, because we know what happens in this issue. I think even if it was her first time reading it, or were you able to catch that she's dead there? Like, I'm wondering if, like, when this first came out, were people able to catch it
Mm-hmm.
then, or was it until Spider-Man saw it himself?
Well, people debated it, right? People were like, whether or not he was dead before, or she was dead before she was even thrown off the bridge.
Yeah.
it was a big debate, and I mean, a major part of it is not that he has authority on this, but Norman says she was dead before your webbing reached her.
Because he said that the shock of the fall killed her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And all right. Okay, so in the letters column of Amazing Spider-Man 125, Roy Thomas says, "It saddens us to say that the whiplash effect she underwent when Spidey's webbing stopped her so suddenly was, in fact, what killed her.
Okay.
In short, it was impossible for Peter to save her. He couldn't have swung down in time. The action he did take resulted in her death. If he had done nothing, though, she still would have probably perished. There was no way out."
Well, yeah, because hitting the water would be like hitting like a slab of concrete.
Wait,
Yeah.
couldn't he have like made like a slingshot and like slung himself down and
Well,
like
yeah,
caught her
that's what I'm
and
saying
landed
is,
in the
like,
water?
Yeah, in future stories, it's like he should have like swooped down and cradled her and then impacted the water on himself.
Yeah.
He trains for it in future stories, so it
He
doesn't
still
happen.
would have got fucked up if he did that.
Yeah, but within the context of this story, especially at this point, like basically the resolution is technically the point of death is her neck snapping, but allegedly Peter really couldn't do anything to have a different outcome.
Right.
That's
And,
kind of the conclusion.
part of what Conway was really going for with the story is, you know, showing how fallible Pete is.
Mhm.
Right.
Yeah, subsequently, Stan Lee has said the snap of the neck is what killed her, which, I mean, again, it's Stan Lee, but it's not like he wrote this story and everything like that. Quote unquote physicists, you know how there's always those, like, there's all these books, like, how superhero physics works and all that shit. So, fake physicists or whatever, they say that the whiplash would have killed her. And then a lot of comics past this have attributed it to the snap. But a few, I think, besides Norman's line in this issue, and then some of the debate within fans over the years, the official handbook of the Marvel Universe, which that was like a big, like, kind of encyclopedia kind of project that ran through the 80s and 90s, that always suggested the shock of the fall. And the final issue of Marvels from Kurt Busiek and Alex Ross, that I'm pretty sure that, like, strongly suggests that it's the shock of the fall rather than the neck snap. But I think it's Phil Sheldon and Marvel's commenting on that, and but he leaves it slightly ambiguous. But Marvel's takes the fall side. And so some of you were asking, like,
on Fallgate.
I mean, I side with what Jerry Conway said in the letters, where he's like, it was the snap of the neck, but Peter couldn't do anything else.
I'll buy that.
It's almost kind of like one of those, like, trolley problem questions, where when you get to the stage where it's like, do you push someone in front of a train? It's like, yeah, you're pushing them in front of the train, but is the train still technically killing them and stuff like that?
It's better just let them all die.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so you guys were asking whether this was like a surprise. In the letters page for Amazing Spider-Man 127, which was the first letters page which actually responded to this issue, a choice quote is, "Somebody ought to throw Jerry Conway off the George Washington Bridge."
Oh my God.
Music writing that?
No,
I hope.
I found the quote. Unfortunately, it's kind of hard to find the letters page for a lot of these old issues, because the scans are, most of the scans online are from Marvel, and so they're all cleaned up and there's no letter page and everything like that. And especially for these kinds of issues, they never put the letters page in the collections usually and stuff like that. As far as
does the Amazing Spider-Man omnibuses have the letters pages?
They do, yeah. But it doesn't collect as far.
Yeah, not to this point.
And I think it's interesting that only 2 issues after that letter, 129, the Jackal first appears.
Yeah.
So
everyone's favorite villain, the Jackal.
Where's Jake at?
Who knows?
Yeah.
You watched this?
So
he was at some rave concert the other night.
Oh, great.
As far as where this story came from, allegedly Conway, Thomas, and Romita pitched the story to Stan, and he claims that he wasn't really paying attention, so he just said, yeah, okay.
And he left.
And while these 2 issues were being produced and released, he was apparently in Europe.
Mm-hmm.
Either, I'm not sure if it was on vacation or a business trip. And so later on, he says that he regretted absentmindedly authorizing this story.
Wow.
And so originally, Conway.
What's that, Jerry? You want to do what? I'm going to Europe in 2 days. Yeah, fine.
Allegedly, Conway and Roy Thomas, they actually wanted to kill Aunt May in this story. But Romita suggested Gwen. And so they went with that. And now this is kind of interesting, because this actually ties into some of the stuff we'll be discussing along the entire Clone Saga. And so Conway, part of his argument for this is that Peter and Gwen were the perfect couple. And so from his view, you either had to break them up and or kill her, or take it to the next level, which would be revealing secret identity and or marriage. And so Conway thinks that personal tragedy and anguish are the essence of Spider-Man, And with this story, he was killing two birds with one stone to fix their relationship and restore tragedy, which is ultimately the same dilemma that Marvel perceived that they had. And they tried to address that with One More Day, which we already briefly touched. The Next Chapter era plane crash for MJ. And that was even one of the core goals of the Clone Saga, which, like I said, we'll get into later. But that's kind of iffy because Conway has also said over the years that he had just gotten bored of Gwen and he much preferred MJ, which is what he moves into.
Dude, he's not wrong.
Yeah, I was gonna say,
After
'cause
this.
I thought back in the Ramita and Stan Lee days when like they first introduced MJ, like I believe like I remember hearing Ramita say that like he loved MJ and like Stan loved Gwen and like he was always upset because he thought that Ramita drew MJ so much more like so much better than Gwen did, and like MJ started taking over the stories more so than Gwen did, and Gwen was slowly shifting into the background while MJ was moving up, into the life of Peter. So, I mean, I know this is a very abrupt way to like get her out of the story, but like, I mean, I guess I don't know if that had anything to do with it. Maybe MJ being like a bigger part of the stories going forward.
Yeah, I think a big part of it is still Gwen versus MJ,
Mm-hmm.
but I think it's still interesting to note that Marvel had like kind of this conundrum of like, can we have Peter Parker with a stable relationship?
Yeah.
Which is a problem that they keep coming back to.
And the answer in 2017 is still
Problem.
no.
Yeah. And so on that note, so we're talking about like, why was Gwen killed? Was she just killed to get to MJ? Was she killed to restore tragedy to Peter's life? Here's the big question. Was Gwen fridged?
I mean, yeah.
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 Yeah. So Women in Refrigerators is kind of this comics concept, which was developed in 1999 by a bunch of feminist comic fans, and they were led by Gail Simone, who'd go on to be a very prominent comics writer herself. And it mainly references Green Lantern 54, where Kyle Rayner's girlfriend gets stuffed in a fridge.
I'm getting that book for Christmas.
It's hilarious.
Yeah, and it's just the concept of when female characters are killed, injured, or depowered as purely a plot device.
Then Captain Marvel is fridged all the time. That's the only thing that happens.
Yeah.
The 3 stories they have for her.
Mm-hmm.
She gets new powers. She loses them.
And I mean, like a lot of like media criticism, I think there is points to it, but also you can't like completely attribute quality to that thing. It's like the Bechdel test. Like you look at it and it provides some insight, but you can't say this is a bad story because X character died, and vice versa.
Mm-hmm.
Right. It's not a catch-all.
Yeah.
So I think he definitely is fridged. I don't think it's necessarily bad. I don't think it makes the story bad.
No, I don't think it's a story.
But it's something to think about, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, when I first read this, and like, I think it honestly makes all the issues following it so much more interesting because like Pete is just so weighed down by like Gwen dying. It's like it sticks with him for like, for the rest of the issues, and it's like you're constantly like trying to tune in and see like how he's dealing with it, and like I think a few issues after this, he gets like attacked by Luke Cage, and like he's trying to move on, and, like his world just keeps spinning, and like he doesn't know how to deal with that. So, I mean, I know it is a plot device, but I mean, it's handled better than some other plot devices with women in Marvel Comics for sure. So,
Or comics or fiction in general.
yeah,
I mean, better than Sins Past that involves the same character.
Yeah, I mean, at the least, I mean, Gwen died, but then this story, it remains relevant, and it's a major cornerstone of Peter Parker, which, I mean, again, it's a plot device serving the character, but it actually matters. Whereas, like, Kyle Rayner's girlfriend, I want to say her name was Alexandra DeWitt. I don't remember, but like
something DeWitt.
And that's kind of the point, right? You don't remember.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You remember Gwen Stacy.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
she had like 4 appearances before dying, maybe, and then like it would refer back to that, but like it didn't become like one of the core pieces of Kyle Rayner's character.
Right.
Yeah, like Gwen was in it for like what, like 90 issues or so, or not maybe 80 issues before she was introduced. Like what, back in like Spider-Man, like 20 something, 30 something.
I think it's 30, which is surprisingly late.
Yeah.
I think 30.
And so, in this, another quick aside, in the second issue, which we'll get into the plot for that one later, but in one of his kind of back and forths with Norman, I think Peter says the words "what if," and of course, Marvel in 1980 in "What If" number 24, the story is "What if Gwen Stacy had lived?" And what happens in that is he saves Gwen by catching her and facing the impact of the water himself. Like I said, he's done since then.
Mm-hmm.
And he reveals his secret identity to her, and they get engaged and they get married. And immediately after the marriage, Jonah publishes Peter's identity in the newspaper and then sends the cops after him to arrest him.
What?
Kiss at the wedding.
Amazing.
Peter has to run, but then I think he runs across Robbie, and Robbie's like, "We'll try and figure it out." And then the story.
No.
Oh, that's
Level Eddie of J. Jonah Jameson.
that's so funny.
Here's
Spider-Man's a menace.
Yep.
I mean, he is.
another funny.
Look at those cops. They said Spider-Man killed that girl.
Another funny anecdote.
Well, it doesn't help Spider-Man because, like, he looks at the cops and he's like, "Yeah, I killed her."
Yeah,
Which that was weird.
We'll get to that later.
But so we've talked several times about how later Spidey figures out how to save people who fall off bridges. In the infamous Civil War storyline, which concerns the Superhero Registration Act, Iron Man and Captain America both use this story as part of their arguments. And so Iron Man's argument is if Spidey had more training at the time, then he could have saved Gwen. And Cap's argument was that Gwen is only in danger due to Norman knowing Peter's identity, which at first doesn't totally 100% make sense, but like with the Superhero Registration Act, everyone would know Peter is Spider-Man, so Norman would still know.
Yeah.
And so that's that's odd.
That is weird.
Comics.
And then
I mean, you hate to interrupt, but we talked about this earlier. This is widely regarded as the death of the Silver Age of comics.
Yeah. Well, I want to come back to that at the end because that's that would be a major point of discussion. But Mike a few times has referenced Sins Past. And so let's get into that real quick. And so Sins Past is a story years and years later in Amazing Spider-Man 509 to 514. It was probably around 2006 or so. And that's by J. Michael Straczynski and Mike Deodato Jr. And that is a story that reveals that Norman Osborn had an affair with Gwen Stacy. And that affair is a continuity insert which happened around Amazing Spider-Man 61.
Spicy.
Which again, so 61, that would have been maybe 2 months ago before, like within the context of this time, within the story time, it would be about 2 months before she dies, which is pretty quick. So they had a secret affair, and Gwen was pregnant and delivered children somehow. The timeline doesn't make sense. But Norman Osborn got Gwen Stacy pregnant with twins.
Nice.
I will say, as creepy as Norman Osborn's face is drawn by Gil Kane, it's still not as creepy as the Deodato face.
Nothing is.
So
Matt, when you go to sleep, is that what you see in your nightmares?
It is. Every night. I wake up in a cold sweat.
Yeah, we've seen it tonight. That's for sure.
Yeah.
So to some extent, Norman was possibly killing Gwen also because he was jealous that she was back with Peter or something.
That is so screwed up. Oh my
It's
god.
so stupid. It's so
How
stupid.
does that get
And
off the
babies with
table?
me, and you want to go to him?
Oh shit.
And then of course Gwen's daughter Sarah looks almost exactly like her mother, and initially tries to flirt with Peter Parker.
Yeah, don't they
And
kiss?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, they do. Well,
And
she kissed him.
Ugh.
And then she is thrown off of the bridge. And then they kind of just disappear.
Filial destiny.
Wait. So going back real quick, you're telling me she didn't inherit any of that great hairline from Norman Osborn? She got all of the hair from Gwen?
Apparently not.
That's bullshit.
No.
I'm pissed.
She should have had like
We're-
she should have had like
Red-
blonde cornrow hair.
That would have been funny.
All right, so let's move into the second issue, which 122, and the story of this is not hidden. It's
Wait,
the
that
Goblin
girl's
Black.
still alive, right? The Gwen's daughter.
Yeah, but she hasn't been seen.
She could be in a ditch for all we
Even,
know.
did Zdarsky use her in Spectacular?
No.
Yet.
Zdarsky
Oh,
used,
he used the girl from Ends of the Earth. Okay.
yeah, Teresa.
No, from Family.
Not
Guy.
Ends of the Earth from that Family Business. OG.
Family
The
Business.
Mark Waid one. The Mark
Cool.
Waid one.
Oh yeah, I like that.
Mark Waid and James Robinson.
And who?
James Robinson.
James Robinson.
Oh, okay.
They co-wrote it. All right,
I didn't know that.
going into
Went into 122.
the Goblin's Last Stand. And so Peter is really mad now.
Oh why?
Yeah, I love when Spider-Man gets mad. He just like he's just like a jokey character, but then there's times where he gets mad and then he gets all serious and he gets. You
I
know,
want to say
it's harder.
I like this cover more than 121.
It's funny you say that. I don't like this cover. Well, I like everything except, you know how there's the little explosion marks of the pumpkin bombs?
Yeah.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
I don't like that part of like in that little corner. I think that detracts from the cover.
Doesn't really make
I like
sense
it.
either. I mean,
It's really
exploding. You should be dead.
I mean,
I like
I'm fine with
the
it.
page of Norman doing his little squats on the glider there.
Yeah. I'm
There's,
looking at it right now.
He's a
there's
very
a
nimble
yes,
man.
Norman where he says, "What worth is there in the paltry existence of one useless female?" I mean, it really makes you think.
I mean, he found use for her.
Oh,
Oh shit! You know, I just realized there's a continuity error in the cover and then the first splash page.
Yeah, the jacket color.
Yes, that triggers me.
I mean, yeah, her entire outfit is the wrong color.
Rip.
But
Oh well.
Oh wait, wasn't
They had one job.
Sarah wearing similar clothes too in Sin's Fast?
yeah,
yeah.
it's anyway. 122. There's this fight with the Goblin. I wanted to mention that all the fight scenes in both these books are really dynamic. I don't think Gil Kane gets enough credit for this story.
Hmm.
I love how the way he
like-
draws the glider's smoke.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah, that's good.
Is that just I noticed it because I've read this a couple times, but I really noticed rereading it now. Just like I think his pencils are pretty fantastic.
Yeah, and the way the panels are set up
Battle
too.
plan is trying to crush the Goblin between his powerful thighs.
Yes, that's a great little panel.
I wanted to comment on this earlier, but it gets in this issue. Jerry Conway uses the word moist twice.
You kept the moist count.
Yeah, the moist count is 2. He uses it once per issue. I'm like, I guess he must have been really hot on that word lately.
Mm.
I
Checking
wanna
every
talk-
checking
what
every
happened.
episode for Mike's moist count.
I want to talk about what happens with Mr. Harry in this issue.
Oh yeah, it's amazing.
Where Pete charges in like a maniac and then leaves him to cry himself to sleep.
Pete, don't leave me. How do I know if you're real?
Pete's,
How do I
like,
know if I'm real?
Pete's such a dickhead to him, though.
I
Like,
mean, it's
blame
understandable,
him?
right?
Yeah.
Like
it's not though.
it definitely is. Like,
Well,
Like, no, Harry's his best friend in the
Yeah.
world. Like, they live together, and
Yeah.
well, he calls him his
I'm
best friend.
firmly with Billy on this.
that page. He's such a dick to him. He sees that his best friend is suffering and is possibly dying in this bed, and he just charges out like, "Nah, I gotta go kill your dad."
Yeah.
Be right back.
He's tough to man.
Yeah, I think you could actually read this story in like a certain way where like basically Peter, this story in a way is kind of about Peter fucking up his Peter half
Yes.
and having his Spider-Man persona get in the way because he right before this story he went to fucking Canada
Yeah.
and left all his friends and stuff to do this job, and then he's sick, and then he's neglecting Gwen, and he's neglecting Harry, and then he's trying to rely on his Spider-Man stuff, and that even like in the scene where he tries to save Gwen, you see him like he's real full of his Spider-Man personality, and he's real cocky and everything. Okay.
Which is why I hate Spider-Man.
I think it's very human.
Yeah.
Which, you know, I think a large part of the appeal to
Can we
Spider-Man.
please talk about like the worst decision Spider-Man makes in this issue is just like telling the cops that he killed her, because like
Yeah.
that immediately gets the
Right.
cops on his tail. The
The cops
entire
were
time.
on his side up until he said that.
Yeah,
And I mean,
And then he punches them.
Yeah.
yeah, and then he punches them
into the
and
other.
throws them off the pier.
Back off, cop.
I think, I mean, I don't know. I think it's
I don't know
understandable
about that.
as well.
He said he
Right?
got 5 stars.
He's guilty. He feels guilty for her death. He's angry about what has happened. I think it's a fairly logical reaction, even if it's not logical.
There's a really
Human reaction.
scary panel. It's
Hmm?
the panel. I don't know if you guys have the issue open.
I do.
So it's the page after he throws the cops and like jumps away. He's putting his jacket on, and like he's like his eyes are so weird.
Yeah, I haven't seen it right here.
This entire sequence
it's like-
when he talks to Harry, he looks bugged out, and like it almost. I feel like it kind of
Little did
I
we
mean-
know it was Pete who was on LSD and not Harry.
it's like I think it's a parallel to the Goblin himself. Like it's showing how Gwen's death brings him down to the Goblin's level, and then which leads up to him then nearly killing him, and then actually killing him. But whatever.
No, he doesn't kill him.
No, he doesn't. I know.
Yeah. So real quick, I want to bring in another continuity insert bit of trivia. So in a backup in Web Spinner's Tales of Spider-Man #1, and this issue came out in 1999, it's written by J.M. DeMatteis, who we'll see plenty more of as we go through this podcast. And it's actually drawn by John Romita Sr. And it's a 10-page story, and it's reminiscing on the final hours of Peter and Gwen's relationship. And I think this, again, I mean, it was published way after the fact, but this kind of adds some nuance to the death and the guilt that Peter felt and everything like that. So their final date, they went to a movie, and Peter doesn't remember what the movie is, but that's somewhat understandable.
By the way, going on a date to the movie is not a great date idea.
No.
I mean, they're pretty established in a relationship at the point. I think it's a bad first date.
Like it's the first time he's seeing her come back. So like,
No, but it's not. This is before he goes to Canada. All right.
okay, this is before he goes. Okay, I was like, okay, yeah, all right, that makes sense. That's fine. I was like,
Yeah,
the
this is
first
the
time
night-
you were to see a movie, you don't even catch up then.
Yeah.
No, this is the night before he goes to Canada. They go to a movie, and then they come out of the movie theater and it's raining. And Gwen says, "Let's just walk in the rain." And Peter's like, "Nah, I don't want to do that. Let's call a taxi." And apparently Gwen was like kind of bummed out that he didn't want to run around. And so,
You don't want to catch a cold.
so they take the taxi to the Coffee Bean, and they hang out there with Harry, MJ, and Flash. And then Gwen is just like sulking, and MJ and Flash and Harry, they're all trying to like cheer her up because they can tell. And then Peter's like, "Oh, okay." So then they leave, and they take a carriage ride through Central Park, and that's like their kind of little final romantic moment. And then he goes to Canada, and then comes back from Canada, and I guess he hangs out with Gwen for like a few hours in Harry's apartment, and then she dies. But then interestingly, the story that I'm talking about has a framing device. And the beginning is Peter looking at a photo album with pictures of him with Gwen. And then it ends with him closing the photo album and kissing MJ and saying ultimately that Gwen made him a better man. And then he thinks, and he's like pretty sure that Gwen would be happy or proud of how he is in his current life.
So
him and MJ go fuck on her grave.
Oh my god.
So it's like Spider-Man Blue.
Where it seems like it was going.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah.
Okay, I need to read that. I didn't know about it.
Yeah, I'll give you more information about it off air maybe. Okay, so let's get to the scene, which was, I think, was pretty masterfully done by Sam Raimi. It's a little different,
Yeah.
but
Actually, I forgot he
Were we
didn't.
talking about the glider scene?
Yeah.
Yeah, I like it in the movie better.
I forgot that he didn't jump over it. I got that confused with the movie.
Yeah, I was like, oh,
He just goes like,
no, he just like
He's kind
he
of
just kind of moves his shoulder
he does
slightly
a-
to the left.
he does a
He
Han,
ducks it.
he does a Han Solo dodge, just moves his head and then just, slightly.
But like, it still begs the question, like, if that had hit Spider-Man, it still would have rocket propelled him into Norman.
Oh yeah, they'd both be dead.
That was the goal. He's trying to bring them both down.
Oh, okay.
It was a suicide mission.
Was it?
No.
Not from the beginning, but I feel like at that point it's plausible.
Yeah. He's
I
like,
mean,
"What the-"
actually, that's kind of a good question. Do you think it was suicide or not? It's kind of ambiguous.
yeah, I think it was definitely like a last ditch effort. I mean,
Yeah.
because right before this we see like Billy was talking about how Peter, if he was at full capacity, he has the potential of just punching a hole through someone. Like Spider-Man is strong as fuck. And so before this,
So I just got that radioactive blood.
we see Peter just decking the shit out of Norman, pointing his face, and then like at the last second, Peter's like, "Oh wait, what am I doing? Let me just take him to the cops." Which again, what it happens when Spider-Man takes Norman Osborn to the cops right now? They're gonna want to arrest him too.
Spider-Man, you killed this girl, and now you're Norman Osborn's an innocent man.
You assaulted 2 police officers.
Yeah, he admitting to killing a woman and he assaulted 2 officers. So Spider-Man is also dead on sight as well.
My favorite thing Spider-Man says in this issue is, "Well, if it isn't Mr. Charisma 1973 to Jameson."
Yep.
Which can be seen as a topical reference.
Yep, which can screw up the time scale.
Oh yeah, it instantly dates the book. Like,
But,
it literally dates it.
But if that's the case, with all the bad things Spider-Man has done in this issue, he is not Mr. Charisma 1973. So Jonah might actually be a candidate to win.
There you go.
What's really funny is, and we'll get into this next episode if I'm right, but I'm pretty sure in the next issue we read, Spider-Man also calls someone Mr. Blank 1974. I swear to God. So,
Yeah, he does do that a lot.
He's a child. He can't think of new jokes.
Dan Lott, bring that joke back. Bring the Mr. Insert thing here. Then year date in.
But it's definitely worth noting. So Norman impales himself and he dies. Well, dies, which that will pop up in about 12 episodes or so, probably past that. And but it's worth noting that Peter, when he realizes that Norman's dead, he's not like, woo!
Yippee!
There's actually some nuance because he's not happy, but also like he's not even really sad either. Like he doesn't fully like regret that like Norman died.
Yeah.
But he says
Kind of
Like, will that happen?
he says he feels more empty now that he's dead than
Yeah.
if he had like actually,
Because he
taken
didn't
him in.
give it to his hatred and actually kill himself.
And then the final part of the death, we see a figure in shadows
Oh,
off the corner watching. And I don't think the drawing really doesn't make it clear at all. And we won't be reading this issue, but we learn in Amazing Spider-Man 126 that was Harry.
does not look like Harry at all. That
The way
hairline.
they drew the figure, it looks like Peter.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
does.
I was like, oh, this might. my initial thought is like, oh, this is going to lead into the original Clone Saga. No, not at all.
No.
No.
Oh, if it was Ben Riley just standing there, I think that would have been cool.
And
No,
so
it doesn't exist yet. But
Yeah, true.
so it's Harry, and then like only
I'm
about
disappointed that he said, "Don't tell Harry."
about 10 issues after it's revealed to be Harry, that's when Harry first becomes the Green Goblin.
Yep.
And then that was an ongoing
Because he has to avenge me.
plotline through about Spectacular Spider-Man 200, I believe, which is when Harry died. Again, died. Well, actually, he did die.
dead.
How did he come back? Did he get like resurrected?
He's magically back in the first issue of Brand New Day.
Yeah. They
He
don't
was
explain.
in Europe. How he
Is
got
that
to
what they-
Europe, I don't remember.
They just say like he was hiding in Europe. I'm pretty sure they don't actually give a reason.
I think Norman might have hid him away in Europe.
Okay, yeah. Well, all right, that sort of makes sense. But I mean, within the original stories, Norman was still dead.
Yes. Yeah.
So the whole Harry Osborn arc concludes in Spectacular Spider-Man 200, where he dies, and that is before the meat of the main '90s Clone Saga. So we're hardly going to see Harry that much anymore once we get past the next 2 or 3 episodes.
Right.
Don't tell Harry.
So now let's get into the epilogue, which is 1 page, and we're going to talk about this a bit because I think this is one of the most important pages of the story.
Oh yeah.
Oh, absolutely. And again, another instance in which Gil Kane is just criminally underrated. Does not get enough credit for this book because this page is amazing.
Yeah, but that being said, though, I almost wonder. I feel like Ramita might have been like a little more, I don't know, like authorial, or I don't know what the right word is, with his inks on this page, because
That's
you definitely see like kind of that Ramita MJ face in this page.
Yep.
I think more than you did.
You get that in the other issue too.
Well, I think it might just be the close-ups, but I think it's more prominent here than her few appearances in 121. So MJ's waiting in Peter and Harry's apartment, and
Which is a thing people did in the 70s, I guess. People are always waiting in other people's apartments.
They
Why
have
leave your
You
doors
didn't have
locked?
cell phones anymore. You didn't have cell phones then.
I know, but do people not lock their
No,
apartment?
you got Spider-Man out there. You don't need to.
I'm guessing no one locks anything because
Like
they're
if-
like, "Oh, where are you going? I'm going to Pete's. Is he there? No.
No.
When's he gonna come back? Don't know."
I'm just gonna wait in his apartment.
Yeah, if I came home and Dan was chilling in my room, I would not be so happy.
Well, you wouldn't be happy to.
But I guess Dan's not the same as MJ, so whatever.
Wow. Okay.
I mean, and also 1973 New York City. That's a bad idea.
Yeah, yeah.
Not the nicest town in the world.
He should be happy that it was just Mary Jane in there.
LSD addicts looking for coins.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Peter goes off on MJ like a little. I mean, it's again, like Matt said, it's understandable. It's a human moment, but he's a total dick.
Yeah. MJ's like, I understand. And he's like, nah, you're a fucking slut. What do you know about losing someone in a relationship?
Yeah.
So you know, you floozy.
Man, so elegantly put, Billy.
He tells her, "You wouldn't be sorry if your own mother died." Like,
Wowee.
Yeah,
That's
Peter's
so
a dickhead.
cool.
I don't know why you guys like him.
Uh,
I mean, I haven't liked the character since like 2007.
and so then the crucial moment, so Peter tells her to leave, and she goes to the door, and then instead of leaving the door and closing it behind her, she closes the door and stays behind. There's no dialogue after that.
And you know what happens after that. Mm-hmm.
They talk it out.
No. Yeah.
With their
Talk
genitals.
it out. Yeah.
I mean,
No,
her
they're like, they-
I mean, who's to
Literally
say?
his girlfriend,
You
his
know.
committed girlfriend, literally died hours ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Dan, whatever
So,
you're thinking, that didn't happen.
I mean, I don't know.
He's not coming home from watching Gwen Guy like, all right, MJ.
Let's go.
He's not doing that.
You
And
sure?
so we get another prominent sound effect where we get a click on the door. And so Matt and I have discussed this over the years. The snap of the neck versus the click of the door. Which is the more...
Is this a discussion you've actually had?
It is.
We've
Oh
talked...
my god!
I mean, I think multiple times actually. It's a pertinent conversation in comics history. It's important.
You hear the snap of the neck, but you've never heard of the click of the door.
Yeah.
So the question really is, which is the more important sound effect in this story?
The snap.
Yeah.
Easily the snap.
The snap.
Well, so I briefly offline, I talked about this with Mike the other day, and Mike brought up an interesting point, which is basically the snap might be more important for comic books, for the industry, and everything like that. But on a character level, emotionally, the click is far more important to Peter Parker and to Spider-Man.
I would agree.
I agree with that. Yeah.
It is a certain story.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But regardless, I mean, obviously, the snap, you could call it the snap heard around the world.
Or you could not.
I mean, you could. I don't know if you would, but you could.
Around kids who read comic books in 1973.
Yeah.
At least that.
Yes.
Picturing a bunch of people like us back in the 90s, could you believe the snap? Did you hear the snap?
I mean, yeah, that was the thing. We were talking about the debates within fandom and everything like that.
Yeah.
But as far as the importance of the story overall, just a few things. In 2001, Marvel did a poll among all their fans to determine the 100 greatest Marvels of all time. And these issues separately, 121 and 122, were ranked 6th and 19th, respectively.
What
was that?
What was the top 5 then?
I'm not going to pull it up right now, but it was like first appearance of the Fantastic Four, first appearance of Spider-Man, probably Galactus Trilogy, first appearance of Giant Size X-Men, and Death of Phoenix. I think that was 5, so it's probably those 5.
I just pulled it up. 1 is Amazing Fantasy, number 15. 2 is Fantastic Four, number 1. Yeah, okay.
And then the Students of S.H.I.E.L.D., this fine establishment, we ranked 121 at number 3 when we did our top Marvel moments of all time. That video is somewhere on here. And
video, isn't it?
Yeah, it's pretty long, but it's worth it.
That was fun. I like doing that.
Yeah, that really was really fun.
25, and I believe myself, Mike, Matt, and Dan were all on that.
I was in the background.
Yeah, that's right.
So if you want to tune into Nick, if you want to see a Nick countdown video, watch us eat chalupas.
Oh God.
What?
Or wait,
no, they're the Locos Tacos. I thought.
No, that was the naked chalupa.
Chicken taco. Yeah. Oh, that's right.
Yeah. All right. And so Mike mentioned this earlier, and another big discussion point is whether this story is the end of the Silver Age. And a lot of people credit this story, the death of Gwen Stacy, as being the finale of the Silver Age, and then obviously moving into the Bronze Age. And some of the arguments at this point, allegedly, it was unthinkable to kill off such a crucial character in a very popular, like widely selling book.
It was
2 years before this, and Roy Thomas was writing that, and he edited this, and Ross Andrew, who we'll see more of next episode, he drew that issue. Obviously, Namor is not quite the scale of Spider-Man, so that doesn't necessarily disqualify that point. Other major possibilities for the markers for the end of the Silver Age. Some people say early 1969, when most comics rose from 10 to 15 cents, which that's kind of arbitrary, but whatever.
I mean, I feel like there's only real one contender, and it's Green Lantern, Green Arrow.
Yeah.
And that's because of the social commentary.
Yeah, the Dennis O'Neil and Neil Adams run on that started in April 1970. And that would be the major DC marker if we were looking at one single point. And then another major point, I think this is my second contender, is around August, September 1970, you had two major moments. Jack Kirby drew his last issue of Fantastic Four, which would be 102, before he went to DC. And Mort Weisinger retired from editing Superman titles. And he was the guy who, in the Silver Age, did all of the really crazy stuff and introduced all of the spin-off characters and everything like that.
I mean, I feel like that's just you, though.
Yeah. I mean, other people have said that.
Yeah, I mean,
but I think those are major contenders. And at least within the wider consciousness, this is the death of Gwen Stacy is the major marker.
Right. Kurt Busiek really, I think, defined that with Marvel's and with his own, I guess, opinions. I think I agree with that. Maybe I'm biased.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm agreeing. I'm gonna say it's Gwen just because while Green Lantern, Green Arrow is a really, really great book, more people talk about and hold up Death of Gwen Stacy more.
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
That's the more wider known thing. Because Green Lantern, Green Arrow is more of a whole series. This is like one snapshot moment that you can definitely be like, okay, here's your cut end here.
Yeah. I mean, it's not to discount too, like Jack Kirby's like leaving Marvel too. I mean, that was a really big thing in the 70s. You know, like he really was a very big factor, you know, next to Stan
Yeah, it was
Lee
a
and
big
that
thing,
whole
but,
age.
like writers and artists are gonna leave.
Yeah.
But again, it's Jack Kirby. It's not a writer.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, it's Jack Kirby, but guess what? Writers and artists are eventually going to leave.
Yeah, I wasn't saying that like him leaving is the end of the Silver Age. I'm just saying like you can't discount like how important that was for that age. You know, that is definitely a contributing factor. I don't know if you can really hold it up and be like this one moment is like that definitive end. Like there was a lot of different things that led up to this. I think it's a gradual change. I don't know if you can just pinpoint like one issue and be like, yeah, this is it.
Yeah.
I think this might be the thing that broke the camel's back for the Silver Age, but like, you know, there's a lot of things that led up to this moment, I think. So
Yeah, well, that's always the challenge is
Yeah.
when you look at the start of the Silver Age, for DC, it's the debut of Barry Allen, which that's like 1956.
mhm.
And then Marvel doesn't transition into the Silver Age all the way until 1961 with the Fantastic Four. And so that's between the two companies, you have a huge gap of when their Silver Ages are starting. Especially when you move into the Bronze Age as well, the end of the Bronze Age, there can possibly be different markers for the different companies. And especially when you start factoring in third publishers and like things like the black and white indie comics boom and stuff like that. And nowadays with the image renaissance.
What are some of the things that people say was the end of the Bronze?
Well, the end of the Bronze for DC, it's kind of like it's kind of Crisis, Dark Knight Returns, and Watchmen happening all pretty quickly around the same time.
Okay.
Marvel, I'd have to think and check that real quick. But for DC, it's pretty easy. It's basically
probably say Watchmen. I'd probably give that the Watchmen.
Yeah, well, it's Watchmen and Dark Knight Returns bringing in like a darker sensibility, and then the major thing is Crisis, where obviously that's a huge marker, where it's like everything pre-crisis is a certain thing, and everything post-crisis is a different thing. And that's why post-Bronze Age, for years, that was called the Dark Age of comic books. And part of it was because Dark Knight Returns was dark and edgy. It had that period. And then as you go into the 90s, it gets this meta commentary where it's like, it's dark because the comics sucked.
Yeah.
And I think for a long time, people battled between whether to call it the Dark Age or the Modern Age. But then, like, I think it's kind of stupid to think that we're still in that post-1986 period. So I would call it Dark Age so that you have room for other stuff, because you can't have the Modern Age and then something.
Yeah, I don't like using the word modern age because technically whatever time you're currently living in, that's the modern age.
Sure.
Giving that that's now happened 20 years ago doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
So at Marvel, a lot of people for the end of the Bronze Age put the marker around the Secret Wars, which is kind of similar to Crisis as far as like a big major event. So it sort of makes sense. And then in 1986, Marvel canceled a lot of long-running books, like Defenders and Power Man and Iron Fist. And around this time is also when they launched the new universe. Not too much fanfare, but they're trying to extend their line. And also you see X Factor, where the X-Men line is actually becoming a huge thing.
Yeah.
Right.
And another major part of the both part of moving into the Bronze Age and especially moving into the Dark Age is you start seeing both companies do a lot of licensed titles, where you start seeing Conan and G.I. Joe and Transformers and stuff like that, which you might want to factor in somehow. But there was a quick little tangent on the chronology of comic book industry,
Right.
if you were looking for that. So does anyone have any final thoughts on these two issues and this story and their impact or anything like that?
Peter's a dickhead.
Peter's a human person.
Well, I mean, like for me, right? Like I remember reading this like in a straight run, and it seems to me like there's a lot of stuff that was happening in Peter's life before this happened, and like to be honest, I mean, I don't know if like Matt remembers this or anyone else who's read that's like the run up until this point, but like Pete really didn't see Gwen like for like a lot of time. Like there was like some times where like he wouldn't see her for a few weeks, or like something would happen. Like one time she went to London, he went chase after her, and like like it wasn't like a really like constant thing with being around her. And then this whole thing happens, and you're just like, whoa, like this sucks. I don't know if I felt like that. I don't know if this is me.
I don't think it's divisive to say that Gwen has had more impact while she's been dead than she ever was alive.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of weird, think about it like that. But I guess that's how it is. But yeah.
All right. So that's pretty much the end of this episode. Come back next time, and we're going to be delving into the original Clone Saga.
Oh yeah.
And so the next episode, we'll be talking about the Amazing Spider-Man issues, and this is still Jerry Conway. And the Jackal will be popping up, and we'll have some actual clone stuff going on.
Well, I can't wait.
Me too.
So tune in next time. Thanks for watching. Subscribe, like, comment.
Spider-Man's a menace.
He is a menace.
Thanks for
He's
watching.
not Charisma
Bye-bye.
1973.
Adios.